Somehow I already smashed a blueberry in the pocket. I don't know how the blueberry got there. Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today I am very excited. I am doing another collaboration with Drew from So Drew. I will have her video and channel linked down below, so definitely check that out. But let's get started on what this collaboration is. First up, we have, this is a really great 1950s wrap dress patterns. This pattern is from 1955. It is McCall's 3514. But essentially what it is it's your basic wrap dress. It has the nice 50s flair to it. It has pockets. It has some little ties up on the shoulders. So I think it should be really cute and really comfortable, and I'm really excited to make it. I've had this one on my list for a while. I was actually going to make the strawberry dress I made recently out of this one, but I didn't have enough fabric for the directionality of the print. So instead, we're going to make it with this fabric. So this fabric is fabric that I picked up with Drew way back in the day in South Carolina last year when we went to that dress factory. It's really pretty. She got the bolt and was kind enough to give me 4.5 yards, which would be the perfect amount for this pattern here. And this also uses bias tape. This is, hopefully you can tell, it's blue bias tape. It matches the blue of the flowers, and it should be really cute. I think that's just along the top. I don't think it goes into the skirt. I'm really excited to see what she makes out of this fabric. I'm really excited to use this fabric. I think it's so pretty, and I think this house dress will be really, really useful for me, specifically because it is a wrap, and so it should be adjustable to my size. But with that, let's go ahead and hop into the fabric cutting. And here we are beginning the cutting. Since I had the exact amount of yardage, I made sure to follow the cutting layout that is in the pattern instructions. A lot of times I just do whatever cutting layout I want to do and I don't pay attention. However, in this case, I definitely needed to pay attention to that. And then the other thing I'm doing here, you can see that these skirt pieces are folded shorter. I took these up by 4 inches so that way I wouldn't have to do as big of a hem. I have really felt like it is a game changer to cut things to my length that I want before I sew. I used to instead hem it and figure it out later, but it resulted in less full skirts and things like that. So I definitely recommend making these folds and alterations to the pattern itself. It's really easy to do, and it has really, I think, increased the amount I enjoy the pieces I make because they are now so flared, as opposed to before when I was hemming them, I was losing a lot of that flare. So highly recommend this. For the first layout, they had me lay out these 4 pieces. There's actually not that many pieces in this pattern because there's no facings, because the bias tape takes care of that, and I just thought that was kind of interesting. And then here we are using the rest of this fabric. Again, I have shortened the skirt piece and I have all the other pieces there. There's definitely like a spot in the middle that's like not used, but that's totally okay. I keep pretending one day I am going to do a crazy quilt with all of my scraps from my garment making. We'll see if that ever actually comes to fruition, but I save pieces like this for that. Good morning. So I have done the cutting out of the fabric. I meant to get started way earlier. It's 11 o'clock, but I kept getting distracted by snuggling Spooky. And then I'm very excited. I finally made an Amazon list of all my favorite sewing things. Occasionally you all ask me about like my favorite sewing things. So I went ahead this morning and I decided to sign up for their influencer program. So basically this does mean I get a cut of commissions, which is great because it helps my channel. However, I want to be super clear, just because I get a cut doesn't mean I am trying to sell you anything I don't use. Everything on that list I use almost every time I sew, or is at least in my toolkits for like special circumstances or things. I just want to be clear about that. I would never sell you guys something that I don't personally use, because influencers who do that are shady. But I wanted to just have a good list for you all to go to of like the pins, the thread, scissors, everything I use. I do usually buy these from small businesses, but I wanted to make an Amazon list because I know Amazon is accessible across the country. So that is kind of why I did that. I'm also going to work on some lists around laundry supplies that I use and my film supplies, just in case that's ever helpful or useful for you. I personally love nosing through other people's Amazon lists, like other influencers' Amazon lists, so I thought it'd be fun to make one myself. So yeah, definitely check that out. It will be linked down below. And yeah, that if you do purchase anything, it does kick back a little bit of money to my channel, which is always appreciated since, as you guys know by my cost breakdowns, I put quite a lot of time and money into this channel. Today we are I'm gonna see if I can knock this all out today. I think I might be able to. Fingers crossed. I don't know, we'll see, because I am getting started later than I wanted to, but I still have hope, and it's cooler today, so I won't get exhausted as quickly, not quicker. So hopefully that all works out. This is a pretty straightforward make from what I can tell. There's not really anything too complicated, and it actually would be a pretty easy dress for you to figure out with an existing pattern. The trickiest bit is going to be getting the bias trim around some of those kind of sharp curves. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about this. It's going to look really, really great, and I think it'll be a really, really used and loved dress once I'm finished with it. So I'm gonna finish up my boba tea that I made this morning, and then after that I am gonna go ahead and jump into sewing. All right, as always, the first step is to put in the darts. Delightfully, there are only 2 darts in this whole entire dress. I really loved that, not gonna lie. Any of you who have been on this channel know that doing darts is not my favorite thing. I find it very tedious, especially on pieces that have like 6, 8, 10 darts. So only having 2 made me very happy. And then here I am pressing those darts. I always press my darts inside. That's how most patterns direct you, but you can press them the other way if you so desire. As much as I hate sewing darts, I really love pressing darts, so I guess there's some benefit to darts, because yes, there is nothing more satisfying than pressing your darts and seeing the garment start to take shape. And then here I am pinning on the side seams. I'm showing you a lot of steps in this video because this is a collab with Drew. I feel like she does a really good job showing how little of your sewing time is spent in front of the sewing machine. Like, so much of it is pinning and ironing and pinning and ironing. So I just wanted to be sure to show that a little bit more in this video, since I think that's a really cool aspect of her channel. And then the other thing you'll see here is there's this little pink mark. So I have to leave that open because I need to make a hole for the belt to come through. That's just like an interesting feature that I haven't sewn before. And then we have now sewn these, and now I am just pinking them to finish the seams and pressing them. I plan on this being a pretty washed dress, so I want to make sure to actually finish my seams. I'm not always great about that. Then the one side with the pink dot, it's basting stitches that I used to sew it together just so I could get a really, really clean press. And then I'll rip those basting stitches out. And then here what the pattern is having me do is I am top stitching along that seam line to like make sure that the hole where the belt comes through stays really flat and nice looking, as opposed to if I didn't top stitch this, I think eventually it would like unfold and you might get like pieces of unfinished seam lines like poking out of this part of the garment. And with that, we are ready for our bias tape. I am going ahead and ironing all of my bias tape out before I sew it. I highly recommend this step just because there's a lot of weird creases from it being wrapped around that cardboard thing. So I always make sure to iron my bias tape. The other thing I've done off camera is I've sewn 2 of the packages together for 1 long yardage. And now it's time to bind the edges. So here I am just stitching that down. First I am stitching along the first fold line, I guess right sides together. And then once I have that sewn all the way around, these curves were really, really tricky to sew with because they're so like sharp, I guess. So this was just a really interesting binding process and really made me prove that I'm able to do this well, I guess, because this was probably the most challenging seam binding I've ever done like this. And now that I have it bound, I am just clipping all of those corners on those really intense curves to hopefully help this like edge binding to lay a little bit more flat. I don't feel like I 100% succeeded here, but I do think things took the corner a little bit better because of the cutouts inside. And then the next step to this is just top stitching it down on the outside. It's important that when you do your bias binding, you do the outside bit last because you want to make sure your top stitch is super even there, and it's okay then if it doesn't catch the back side. But if you do it the other way, you have really ugly stitching on the front side of your garment. I've learned this by experience and trial. And then here, these curves are extra hard because you're easing a little bit of the bias tape into them. It was just definitely a real true like proof of like my practice and how much better I've gotten at sewing. Definitely at the beginning of my sewing journey, I couldn't have done this. While this is a really simple project that I could have completed at the beginning of my sewing journey, these curves would have been so hard. Not that they were easy at this point, but I definitely was able to manage them a little bit better. And then here I'm also doing the bias binding for the pockets. I'm doing the exact same process here, but it's a lot easier because it's just a really short straight line. But I wanted to get this done all at the same time because once I change my thread back to the other color, I don't want to have to be changing thread back and forth. And then here I am taking my pocket and I am pressing down the raw edge so that way I can sew along the folded edge and it looks really, really nice for the front of the pocket that's going to be on the outside of the dress. Usually you would baste this down as well, but I skipped the basting step because I got such a good press. I wasn't really concerned with having it like do anything funky or move because it was such a firm press, and it then saves me from having to later pull those basting stitches out. And then the next step is me sewing all of the skirt panels together, starting with the back, going to the front, and then sewing the sides to each other. And then after that's done, I am again finishing these seams by pinking them, and then I am pressing them down. Again, a reminder, most of sewing is not spent at the sewing machine. It is spent at the ironing board, and it is so important to press your seams. It makes a huge difference in your final garment. And then here I am following the markings and pinning on this pocket. This is really straightforward. I will then top stitch around the edge, which is what I'm doing here. The trick when you stitch a pocket down like this is to make sure you are only catching the one layer. It is really easy when you're doing this to catch stuff underneath and have to unpick, and the goal is always to not have that happen. And now with having the bodice and the skirt pretty much done, it is time to sew them together. So here I am just sewing across the waist seam, following the markings. It's interesting, they have this like weird bit that you're not sewing together because it will fold. And then there's no instructions to do this, but I wanted to go ahead and top stitch that seam down to make it nice and neat and also give it an extra bit of sturdiness, since I plan on having this be kind of like more like a day work dress where I'm like cleaning the house and moving in it. The more secure I can make it, the better. And now we're kind of wrapping this up. This was a really, really easy project. So here what I'm doing is I am sewing the ties. I need two, one for each side of the dress. And here I have turned these ties inside out and I am now pressing them. I just find pressing ties really, really satisfying, so I hope you do too. And then here the last step is this hem. I am doing this hem the way I now do all rounded hems since learning this technique from a pattern. I'm first just turning over the edge by 1/4 inch and sewing it down to get a clean edge up at the top of the garment. And then after that I am just running through gathering stitches. And then here I am using my favorite gauge to make sure the hem is super even, and I am pulling those gathering stitches I ran along the edge to help ease the dress in. It looks a little bit messy from the back, but from the front it looks absolutely gorgeous, and this is by far the best hemming technique I've found for a rounded edge. And now it's time for all the hand stitching of the garment. I always really enjoy this because I can sit down and watch TV and do it. And here I am stitching down that fold that gives you a nice clean seam finish on the sides of the wrap of the skirt. And then here the very last step is to pin the ties where they go, and to sew that down. I hand sewed these down, but I think I might go back and just do a square of a machine stitch here because I need these to be really, really sturdy since they are going to be where the most tension lies on the dress. But for right now, I like the subtleness of it being hand stitched down, and I went over my seams a couple of times to hopefully have them be sturdy enough. It does look nicer, so I will fix these if they do indeed tear or have problems in the future when I'm wearing this. But with that, we have wrapped this up. I am ready to show you the entire garment and I can't wait for you to see it. So let's go to the reveal. wrapped up this project. I think it turned out really, really cute, and I can't wait to see what Drew made. But before we hop into the full-on wrap-up, I am first gonna talk about what did this cost to make. I have my little spreadsheet printed out in front of me. So the fabric for this, the cost was $0 because Drew gave it to me, which was very nice of her and really keeps the cost of this dress very, very low. The notions were only $12. This was the thread and the bias binding. This didn't require any buttons, any zippers, anything like that, so the notions for this was also pretty easy. Then the most expensive part of this is the pattern. The pattern was $49.61. I expect a pattern like this to be pretty expensive because A, you don't see it listed that often, like it's a fairly rare pattern, and B, it's a really, really practical pattern, a high value desire, whatever pattern. So it is an expensive pattern, don't get me wrong. Paying almost $50 for a pattern is pretty wild, but I was pretty sure I was gonna really like this one, so I went ahead and I spent the money on it. And that brings us to a supply total of $61.61. This is a really cheap dress, and I'm really happy with it. The cost for me was really, really great. However, if you were going to say buy this, what would it actually cost once you factored in labor? This dress was a very fast dress for me. This only took me 7 hours to make. This was a pretty easy breezy, no stress dress to make. It also helped that because of the style of it, it was going to kind of be a guarantee fit. So that 7 hours multiplied by $25, which is the wage of a seamstress in Seattle. However, it's still below the living wage, so I'm debating adjusting that at some point. That brings our labor cost to $175. So that brings the grand cost of this dress to $236.61. I think this is probably one of the cheapest projects I've made since I've started doing this. I definitely had cheaper projects back before I started doing this because I've kind of, over time as I've been sewing, know my fabric preferences a little bit more and know that I prefer to buy stuff that's a little bit higher quality than I did earlier in my sewing days. Earlier in my sewing days, I was sewing with a lot of $2 a yard fabrics. Things are just generally trending up. However, this is a pretty stable, and if I use this pattern even 2 or 3 more times, that is going to cut the cost of the pattern into half or thirds, or fourths or fifths or sixths. So it will ultimately get cheaper the more I use this pattern, and I do think I will use this pattern again. So here is the dress. Sorry, it's kind of a mess. I just took it off after wearing it for a day of work. Somehow I already smashed a blueberry in the pocket. I don't know how the blueberry got there. I don't know how I smashed it, but there is a smashed blueberry in one of these pockets, so I already have to put it through a test wash. But I've worn this one day in office, and then I've worn it a couple days at home. So this dress has been really tested. I've already worn it a bunch. So once I got the ties the way I liked them, they were great. It did, however, take longer than I wanted to figure that out, and I am not sure how much I super actually love this neckline. It is so high. I think if I was to do this again, I would try to give it a lower neckline, and I would also probably try to get rid of the ties. The ties do add a great bit of flexibility and sizing. However, for me, that benefit is maybe not necessarily worth it. I still very much like this dress. The other thing that I don't super love is this hole for the belt to come through is a little bit big, so it does gap and you can see a weird flash of stomach if you're really looking for it. Don't get me wrong, this isn't something you can just casually look at. You would have to really be looking at and wondering maybe how the dress works to notice it, but it is noticeable. After wearing this dress a few days, it is so comfy. I think this is going to become a wardrobe staple, and I think it's really important to point out with a project like this. I'm not gonna lie, this is not my favorite piece I've ever made in my entire life. However, it is an incredibly utilitarian piece. I'm going to wear it a lot. I'm gonna wear it when I'm clean. I'm gonna wear it when I sew. I'm gonna wear it when I grocery shop, go to the farmer's market. This is a very functional dress. The pockets fit my wallet and my keys, so I don't even need a purse when I wear it. And I think it's important for me to remember that it's important to sew basics like this that I'll wear all the time, because as fun as it is to sew the really pretty daisy foofy tulle dress that I sewed a few weeks ago, it's also really important to sew basics that you're going to wear every day. This dress already has gotten more wear than that dress will probably see over the next 3 or 4 years. It's all in perspective. This is not the most exciting thing I've ever sewn, but it will function really, really well in my life, and I think that's really important too. The only maybe downside to this dress is I got told by multiple people it maybe looks like scrubs, which is a little bit rude, but I'll recover. They said it was just because of the color of the binding. So in the future, honestly, if I make this, I think I would probably make my own bias binding in like a coordinating pattern of fabric, because I think it would be really cute to kind of use this to mix prints so that it doesn't look like scrubs. But yeah, I'm not too offended. This dress will still be a probably weekly wear for me, so no harm, no foul. I'm kind of a water off a duck's back type person. You could dwell on those things and they can make you hate something that actually functions really well for you, or you can move on with your life. And I kind of choose the latter. A huge thank you again to Drew for this fabric. It was absolutely perfect. This was really fun to work with. It's also always nice to work with a very sturdy cotton. I don't always get to do that on this channel anymore because I've gotten ambitious, crazy, I don't know. So this was very fun, and I'm so curious to what Drew is going to make. So definitely make sure to check over on her channel. I always think it's really fun to use the fabric to make something that both of you are working on, because people have vision for fabric very differently. Like if you gave a bunch of seamstresses the same fabric, you would get wildly different results. And so I think it's really fun to work on projects like this with Drew, because it like really shows that. Definitely, again, check that out. It will be linked down below. But that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed. I have lots of sewing upcoming. I'm going to be doing 6 weeks of spooky sewing over on my channel through mid-September through October. I'm going to be doing some autumn themed sewing as well as some spooky themed sewing. So it'll be a lot of fun. I'm gonna be doing a lot of reach projects. I'm also gonna do some more comfy projects, a lot of different things, some costumes. All of them will be dresses, spoiler alert, because I only wear dresses for the most part. So yeah, definitely subscribe and stick around for that. I would love to have you, and I will see you next time. Bye!